I want to show you this video of Andrew Yang, and he's talking with Jake Tapper of CNN. They talk about college athletes being able to get paid for their work. They talk about racism, Andrew Yang using stereotypes, talk about a wide variety of ideas. And throughout all of these, Andrew Yang is proving again and again why he is so likable. He is proving why so many people are wanting him to win the presidency and why he's been able to gain so much momentum when he literally had zero political experience before this. If you are a fan of the video, go ahead and like it, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment if you have any thoughts on Andrew Yang. If you like him, dislike him, I want to hear back from you.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. After the Democratic debate this week, entrepreneur Andrew Yang gained more Twitter followers than any other Democratic candidate, according to an analysis by Politico. Perhaps that had something to do with a contest he announced on stage. He wants to do for 10 families what he's proposing to do for all Americans, pay them a $1,000 a month dividend, freedom dividend, he calls it. Joining me now to talk about this and much more, entrepreneur and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Mr. Yang, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I want to play some of the reactions from your fellow Democratic candidates to your announcement.
It's original, I'll give you that.
I admire and frankly take joy in hearing people with innovative ideas and who are questioning status quo and willing to challenge it.
It doesn't seem like your fellow 2020 Democratic candidates are taking your proposal very seriously. What's your response?
Oh, well, the freedom dividend's catching on like wildfire around the country because Americans realize it's not about the money. I've been personally giving the freedom dividend to several American families for months now. And when I saw one of the recipients, Kyle Christensen in Iowa, a few weeks ago, he told me he'd use some of the money to buy a guitar. And he was playing shows locally, and he was beaming. He said he was playing shows for the first time in years. For him, it was a guitar. For Jody Fassey in New Hampshire, it was car repairs. For Mallory Shannon in Florida, it was going back to school. So Americans are waking up to the fact that we can solve our own problems if we have a dividend that gives us some extra resources to do so.
There's been a...
Notice the arrogance of Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris as they are basically laughing at Andrew Yang's ideas, as if they understand economics a lot better than he does, even though he has a background studying it. And for anyone that reads his book, Smart People Should Build Things, it's very clear that he understands the economy, that he understands societal issues. He understood the problem well and had the foresight to understand that a lot of talent was just being pumped into a few major cities when we needed to spread it out. And it was also being pumped into a few major industries like law and banking and healthcare when we need to spread it out across multiple industries. So for them to laugh at Andrew Yang shows their real arrogance, and also it indicates that they haven't really studied his proposals and learned what he's saying for themselves.
A lot of debate about the legality of your proposal, not the proposal in terms of the larger freedom and dividend if you become president, but what you're doing as an individual candidate. Larry Noble, the former general counsel of the Federal Election Commission, told CNN that what you're proposing would not be legal. It's not legal, he says, to give those 10 families money from your campaign to use however they want. But are you sure that you're on solid legal ground?
Yeah, we have an army of lawyers who've signed off on it, and we're sure that this is perfectly legal. But I do want to reflect for a moment, Jake, on the fact that if I gave $1 million to a media company or consultants or hired like a small army of canvassers, no one would blink an eye. But if we give the money directly to the American people, somehow that's problematic. So it just speaks to how messed up our system is, where giving money directly to Americans actually raises eyebrows.
Right here, he indicates the hypocrisy and the corruption behind the American political system. The fact that with Citizens United, you can have billions of dollars given by corporations and by the wealthiest individuals, but then there's problems with Andrew Yang's campaign experimenting with the freedom dividend by themselves.
Let's talk about another issue you talk about a lot on the campaign trail. You warn that automation is going to result in catastrophic layoffs in the United States. Some experts say that your fears are overblown. They point to the unemployment rate at a 50-year low, labor productivity increases that have stagnated, not what you would expect to see if robots were indeed taking over. Are you concerned at all that you might be overstating the threat of automation?
Well, what's indisputable, Jake, is that manufacturing employment went down by 4 million over the last number of years, and the vast majority of that was due to robots and automation. It's also indisputable that despite this headline unemployment rate, labor force participation is at a multi-decade low of 63%, and millions of Americans have stopped participating in the workforce, which artificially makes that unemployment rate look better, much better than it actually is in real life.
I want to ask you about something that you tweeted about at length this weekend. One of the 3 new cast members for Saturday Night Live, a guy named Shane Gillis from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, he offered what I think critics would call a half-hearted apology for having used racial slurs in his act, specifically against Asian Americans, including specifically against you. Now, you tweeted yesterday about what it feels like to be called these horrific racial slurs. But you also said that you forgive the comedian and you hope others can as well. As one of the most prominent Asian American political figures, did you feel any special responsibility to try to reflect what others in the Asian American community are feeling, or were you just speaking for yourself?
Well, there have been a number of reactions to my call for forgiving Shane Gillis, and I've experienced a lot of anti-Asian racism throughout my upbringing. And it hurts, and it's something that's very real. And I do think anti-Asian racial epithets are not taken as seriously as slurs against other groups. But at the same time, bigger picture, I believe that our country has become excessively punitive and vindictive about remarks that people find offensive or racist, and that we need to try and move beyond that if we can, particularly in a case where the person is in this case, to me, like a comedian whose words should be taken in a slightly different light.
I've heard from Asian Americans, I'm sure you have too, who say that some of your joking references to being Asian American on stage, about how you know math, about how you know a lot of doctors, feed into stereotypes, and they resent that as well, while obviously it's not the same level as what that comedian is accused of doing. What are your feelings on that?
Well, the Asian American community is very diverse, and certainly I would never claim that my individual experience would speak to the depth and breadth of our community. At the same time, I think Americans are very smart, and that they can actually see right through that kind of myth. And if anything, by poking fun at it, I'm making Americans reflect a little bit more on them.
When he brings up that our culture is becoming extremely punitive on those who may offend someone when it comes to race, he's bringing up ideas that, again, are going to win over a lot of moderates, a lot of Trump supporters. A lot of Americans are not happy with the way that sociologists are trying to change the definitions of words and promote the idea that people of color can never be racist, that women can never be sexist. These ideas go against the long-held definitions for these words that we've had. Andrew Yang understands that he's going to win over a lot of people with that, and also bringing up that when it comes to that comedian, he's Asian American. If anything, he has more reason to be upset with his remarks than most people would. He's bringing up saying like, that man still doesn't deserve to lose his job. Definitely shows character with Andrew Yang. Then Andrew Yang defending himself, saying that when he talks about math and knowing doctors because he's Asian, he's basically making himself likable. He is making himself seem fun and friendly. In his book, Smart People Build Things, he talks about how his parents would eat fish head and how they paid for his college with the mortgage and how they always reminded him of these things. He grew up in a home where he understands his identity.
California Governor Gavin Newsom is weighing whether he should sign a bill that would allow college athletes to sign endorsement deals and earn some money off their likenesses. If you were president, would you push for a similar bill at a national level?
I 100% would. I am so glad that Gavin's leading on this. To me, it's immoral that you have institutions that are profiting to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases, and then they're saying these athletes are amateurs and they can't receive a dime. They can't even get money for autographs or appearance fees or their likeness being used on video games. And so we need to own up to the fact that many of these athletes are massive revenue generators for these institutions and start compensating them accordingly.
Andrew Yang, we've been trying to get you on the show for a while. It's good to have you here. I hope you'll come back. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jake. I know it's been overdue, but I appreciate it.
That last point he brings up about basically universities taking advantage of college athletes. This is going to, again, make a lot of people like Andrew Yang. He's pointing out that people should be able to benefit from their own labor and from their own work. When it comes to a lot of these college athletes, there's a lot of them that don't play in the pros. Some of them get injured in college. And so for them to be able to generate money is huge for their livelihoods. Andrew Yang, throughout this interview, just hits point after point after point and proves why he is likable. He proves why he is raising so much money. Again, I would recommend reading his books. I've started reading Smart People Build Things, and Andrew Yang's intellect is definitely on display. He highlights in there that he got a 168 on the LSAT. When the other politicians kind of laugh at him, like Buttigieg and Harris, shows that they really don't understand. They have this elitist mindset that for someone to be a politician, you need to climb this perfect ladder. That's what is more important, as opposed to just having good ideas, being sincere, being good with people, and having good intent.